The Galactic Council chambers had never seen such unity. Representatives from 12,000 different species sat in perfect silence as Admiral Zethkar of the Vortan Empire addressed the assembly. His forearms gestured dramatically, while his compound eyes gleamed with confidence. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," his voice resonated through the translation devices. "Today we stand on the precipice of the greatest victory in galactic history. For too long we have watched in fear as the humans spread across the stars like a plague. Their violent nature, their unpredictable emotions, their reckless expansion, all of it ends today. In the viewing galleries, beings with tentacles, wings, crystalline bodies, and forms that defied description nodded in agreement. The crystalline hierarchy's representative, a living mountain of sentient gemstone, pulsed with approval. The insectoid hive queens clicked their mandibles in unison. Even the energy beings of the ethereal collective flickered with satisfaction. "The humans believe they are special," continued Admiral Zethkar. "They call themselves the inheritors of Earth, the children of Sol, but we know better. They are nothing more than primitives who stumbled upon faster-than-light travel through blind luck. Today we show them their true place in the cosmic order." The holographic display above the assembly activated, showing the current positions of human colonies scattered across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Red markers indicated the positions of the combined alien fleet, the largest armada ever assembled. Over 50 million ships from every major civilization, their combined firepower capable of cracking planets. Dr. Sarah Chen, the human ambassador to the Galactic Council, sat in the human delegation section with her small team. Her face remained calm despite the fear churning in her stomach. Around her, the other human representatives tried to maintain their composure as thousands of alien eyes focused on them with predatory hunger. "Ambassador Chen," Admiral Zethkar's voice boomed across the chamber. "Would you care to address the council before we begin the final phase of our operation?" Sarah stood slowly, her heart pounding. She had known this day might come. The other species had always viewed humanity with suspicion and fear. Humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too willing to fight when cornered. They had tried diplomacy for decades, but it was clear that the other species had been planning this moment all along. "Admiral Zethkar," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation system, "I urge you to reconsider this course of action. Humanity has done nothing to warrant such aggression. We have honored every treaty, respected every boundary established by this council." A chorus of hisses, clicks, and electronic buzzes filled the chamber, the alien equivalent of laughter. The Saurian representative, a massive reptilian creature with yellowed fangs, spoke up. "Your species honors treaties only when it serves your interests, human. We have watched you spread across the galaxy like a virus, consuming resources and establishing military outposts under the guise of peaceful colonization. The evidence is clear," added the Aquatic Federation's delegate, its gills fluttering with agitation. "Your species' military expenditure has increased by 300% over the past 50 years. Your population growth is unsustainable. Your technology advances at a rate that threatens the stability of galactic civilization." Sarah's jaw tightened. Everything they said was technically true, but they ignored the context. Humanity's military had grown because other species kept testing their borders. Their population was expanding because they had found ways to terraform previously uninhabitable worlds. Their technology advanced rapidly because humans refused to accept limitations that other species considered natural. "You speak of threats," Sarah said, "but humanity has never initiated conflict with any member species of this council. Every military action we have taken has been in self-defense or in protection of our allies." "Allies?" scoffed the Mechanical Collective's representative, a towering android with glowing optical sensors. "You mean the species you have corrupted with your aggressive philosophies. The Altarians were a peaceful people before human contact. Now they build warships and speak of manifest destiny across the stars." Admiral Zethkar raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "Enough debate. The time for words has passed. The combined fleets of the Galactic Alliance are already moving into position around every human world. Your colonies will be occupied, Your populations relocated to designated reservation worlds, and your technology will be placed under galactic supervision. This is not a negotiation, Ambassador Chen. This is the new reality. The holographic display updated, showing the massive alien fleets moving through hyperspace toward human space. Sarah felt her blood run cold as she realized the scope of the operation. Every human world was being targeted simultaneously. There would be no time to mount a coordinated defense, no opportunity to evacuate civilians. How long? She asked quietly. The first phase begins in 6 hours. Admiral Zethkar replied with evident satisfaction. Your frontier colonies will fall first. Then we move inward toward your core worlds. Earth itself will be the final prize. Sarah looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces watching her with a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. Some species had joined the alliance out of fear, others out of opportunism, but all of them had united against humanity. It was the greatest coalition in galactic history, and it was aimed squarely at her people. You have made a terrible mistake, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. You think you understand humanity, but you don't. You see our aggression, our expansion, our refusal to accept limits, and you assume we are just another predator species to be contained. But you've never seen what humans are truly capable of when their survival is at stake. The chamber erupted in more alien laughter. Admiral Zethkar's compound eyes glittered with amusement. Bold words from a representative of a species about to become an enslaved population. Tell me, Ambassador, what exactly do you think your primitive warships can do against 50 million vessels? Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the chamber, and something in that expression made several nearby aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. You're about to find out, Admiral. You're all about to find out what it really means to fight a species that crawled out of a gravity well by sheer stubbornness and has never learned how to surrender. The transmission ended, and silence fell over the Galactic Council chambers. The die had been cast and there was no turning back. Captain Marcus Rodriguez gripped the armrests of his command chair as the UES Defiance shuddered under enemy fire. Through the viewscreen he could see the approaching alien armada, a wall of ships stretching beyond the horizon of space itself. The colony world of New Geneva hung behind them, its 3 million inhabitants desperately evacuating to the underground shelters that every human world had built in preparation for this day. Sir, we're detecting over 10,000 enemy vessels in the first wave alone, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the tactical station. Energy signatures suggest ships from at least 40 different species. They've got everything from Vorthan dreadnoughts to crystalline siege platforms. Marcus nodded grimly. The Defiance was a state-of-the-art human battleship, but it was only one vessel against an impossible number. Around them, the other ships of the New Geneva Defense Fleet, 12 destroyers, 6 cruisers and 2 other battleships prepared for what everyone knew was a hopeless fight. Communications. Open a channel to all ships in the fleet, Marcus ordered. All frequencies. Channel open, sir. Marcus stood, straightening his uniform. This is Captain Rodriguez to all vessels of the New Geneva Defense Fleet. We all know what we're facing here today. The entire galaxy has united to destroy everything we've built, enslave our people and erase humanity from the stars. They think we're just another species to be conquered and controlled. On the tactical display, the alien fleet continued its approach. Marcus could see the formations, textbook galactic military doctrine designed to overwhelm through superior numbers and firepower. They had studied every major battle in recorded galactic history and applied those lessons to create the perfect strategy for crushing human resistance. But they've made one critical error in their calculations, Marcus continued, his voice carrying to every human ship in the system. They've forgotten that humans don't fight by the rules the rest of the galaxy considers sacred. We don't surrender when the odds are against us. We don't retreat when victory seems impossible. And we sure as hell don't go quietly into the night when someone threatens our families. The first long-range missiles from the alien fleet began to appear on sensors, thousands of them, each one capable of destroying a human ship with a single hit. The standard galactic doctrine was to overwhelm enemy defenses with massive salvos, then move in with energy weapons for the killing blow. All ships, implement Protocol 7, Marcus ordered. Across the fleet, Human captains began issuing orders that would have seemed insane to any galactic military observer. Instead of forming defensive formations or retreating to more advantageous positions, the human ships began to accelerate directly toward the alien armada. Their engines screamed as they pushed past safe operational limits, their crews enduring crushing G-forces that would have incapacitated most alien species. The Defiance led the charge, its fusion engines burning white-hot as it raced toward the incoming missile swarm. At the last possible moment, Marcus gave the order that defined human military doctrine: evasive pattern Alpha 7. Show them what unpredictability looks like. What happened next violated every principle of galactic naval warfare. Instead of maintaining formation and attempting to intercept the missiles with point defense systems, the human ships scattered in seemingly random directions. They rolled, dove, and spiraled through space in patterns that defied computer prediction algorithms. The alien missiles, programmed to target ships following logical tactical maneuvers, found themselves chasing ghosts. Admiral Zethkar, monitoring the battle from his flagship, watched in growing confusion as his carefully planned opening salvo achieved less than 30% effectiveness. The human ships were moving in ways that made no tactical sense, yet somehow most of them had survived the missile barrage. Analysis, he demanded from his tactical officer. Sir, the human vessels appear to be following no recognizable pattern. Our targeting computers are having difficulty predicting their movements. They're flying like there's no coordination between their ships at all. But there was coordination, just not the kind that showed up on alien sensors. Human naval doctrine had been developed through centuries of warfare on Earth's oceans, then adapted for three-dimensional space combat. Where alien species relied on computer-calculated optimal patterns, humans used intuition, experience, and the kind of split-second decision-making that came from a species that had evolved as persistence hunters. The human fleet reformed as it closed distance with the alien vanguard, but again their formation made no sense by galactic standards. Instead of maintaining safe distances between ships, they flew dangerously close to each other. Their movements synchronized through a combination of advanced communication systems and something the aliens couldn't quantify: trust between human crews, who had trained together for years. All ships, target the crystalline platforms first, Marcus ordered. Those siege engines are designed to crack planetary shields. We can't let them get into bombardment range. The human ships opened fire with weapons that surprised the alien commanders. Instead of the standard energy beams used by most galactic navies, human ships unleashed a mixture of kinetic projectiles, plasma bolts, and exotic weapons that seemed to violate several interspecies warfare conventions. Railgun rounds accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, punched through alien shields that were designed to deflect energy weapons. Fusion torpedoes with variable yield warheads adapted their explosive power based on target analysis in real time. The crystalline hierarchy's massive siege platforms, each one the size of a small moon, found themselves under attack from weapons they had never encountered. Human kinetic rounds struck with such force that they created resonance frequencies in the crystalline hulls, causing internal structural damage that spread through the living crystal like cracks in glass. One of the platforms, a magnificent structure that had bombarded a dozen worlds into submission, began to fracture along its natural crystal planes. Its crew of crystalline beings desperately tried to modulate their frequency to repair the damage. But the human weapons had been specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in crystal-based technology. The platform exploded in a shower of rainbow light that briefly illuminated half the system. Admiral Zethkar stared in shock as the tactical display showed the destruction of a siege platform that should have been invulnerable to the weapons of a single human fleet. Around him, his bridge crew struggled to process what they had just witnessed. How did they know our platform's structural weakness? Demanded the crystalline representative aboard his flagship. Impossible, muttered the mechanical collective's observer. Those kinetic weapons shouldn't have sufficient penetration to breach hierarchy armor. But Marcus Rodriguez, watching from the bridge of the Defiance, smiled grimly. The alien coalition had spent decades studying human technology and tactics, but they had made a crucial error. They had studied human military doctrine as if it were static, unchanging. They hadn't accounted for humanity's greatest advantage in warfare: adaptation. For 50 years, human scientists and engineers had been quietly studying every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. Every diplomatic mission, Every trade agreement, every cultural exchange had been an opportunity to learn about alien strengths and weaknesses. When the time came for war, humanity would be ready with weapons specifically designed to counter each species' advantages. The battle for New Geneva was just beginning, but already the alien coalition was learning a hard lesson about fighting a species that refused to play by the established rules of galactic warfare. Admiral Thexnor of the Hive Queens watched in growing alarm as the reports flooded in from across human space. What should have been a swift, coordinated conquest was turning into a nightmare of unexpected resistance and impossible victories. Her mandibles clicked nervously as she processed the information streaming from dozens of simultaneous battlefields. "Report from Kepler 442, announced one of her drone officers. "The human colony ship Ark Royal has somehow disabled 3 of our heavy cruisers using what appears to be modified mining equipment. Their cargo bay was full of civilians, but they're fighting like a military vessel." "That's impossible," Thexnor chittered. "Civilian vessels don't carry weapons capable of threatening military ships." "Ma'am, the humans aren't using conventional weapons. They've weaponized everything. Cargo containers filled with explosives, mining lasers converted to ship killers. Even their atmospheric processors have been turned into massive electromagnetic pulse generators." Across the galaxy, human colonies that should have fallen within hours were mounting defenses that defied all military logic. On New Titan, a mining colony with no military installations had somehow held off a Saurian invasion fleet for 18 hours using improvised weapons built from industrial equipment. The colonists had turned their entire asteroid mining operation into a defensive network, launching chunks of ore at near relativistic speeds toward approaching enemy ships. On the agricultural world of Greenhaven, farmers were using their crop-dusting aircraft to deploy chemical weapons that specifically targeted the respiratory systems of different alien species. The weapons shouldn't have existed. The Galactic Council had banned chemical warfare centuries ago, but humans had apparently been studying alien biology with the same intensity they applied to everything else. "Sir," reported the tactical officer aboard Admiral Zethkar's flagship, "we're receiving distress calls from 17 different battle groups. The humans aren't fighting the way our simulations predicted. They're using tactics that don't appear in any military database." Zethkar's 4 eyes focused on the main tactical display, which showed the progression of battles across human space. Instead of the green markers that should have indicated swift alien victories, the map was filled with contested zones and, increasingly, red markers showing alien fleet elements that had gone silent. "Explain." "Sir, at Proxima Centauri, the humans have somehow turned their orbital manufacturing platforms into kinetic weapons. They're launching finished spacecraft directly into our formations at industrial rates. At Wolf 359, they're using their solar collection arrays as massive focusing mirrors to concentrate stellar energy into weapon beams. And at," the officer paused, checking his instruments, "at Ross 128, they appear to have detonated their own fusion reactors to create artificial supernovas that destroyed an entire Aquatic Federation battle group." The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. Human colonies weren't just defending themselves. They were turning their entire civilian infrastructure into weapons of war. Every factory, every power plant, every piece of mining equipment had apparently been designed with dual-use potential. The humans hadn't just prepared for this war. They had built their entire interstellar civilization around the assumption that someday they would have to fight for their survival against overwhelming odds. "How are their casualty rates?" Zethkar asked, hoping for some sign that the human resistance was unsustainable. That's the problem, sir. They're not retreating even when faced with certain death. At Tau Ceti, we destroyed their main defensive fleet, but the surviving humans are continuing to fight using escape pods armed with nuclear warheads. At Barnard's Star, colonists are manually piloting damaged ships on collision courses with our vessels. Their casualties are enormous, but they're inflicting losses on us that shouldn't be possible. In the council chambers back on the galactic capital world, emergency sessions were being called as reports of the unexpected resistance reached the political leadership. The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy, flickered with agitation. "The humans are using suicide tactics," it pulsed in electromagnetic frequencies. "This level of fanaticism is unprecedented in galactic history. They're treating every battle as if the survival of their species depends on it." "Because it does," said Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been permitted to remain in the chambers as an observer. You've declared a war of extinction against humanity. What did you expect? That we would politely line up for processing? The mechanical collective's android representative turned its optical sensors toward her. Rational beings accept defeat when resistance becomes futile. Your species is throwing away lives for no strategic benefit. Sarah's eyes blazed with anger. You're not just trying to defeat us in battle. You're trying to destroy everything we've built, enslave our children, and erase our culture from the galaxy. Against that kind of threat, there is no such thing as futile resistance. Every human who dies fighting buys time for others to escape, to regroup, to find new ways to hurt you. She stood and walked to the central holographic display, which showed the real-time status of battles across human space. You studied our military capabilities and concluded you could overwhelm us through superior numbers. But you never studied what makes us human. We're the species that walked out of Africa with nothing but stone tools and conquered an entire planet. We're the species that looked up at the stars and decided we belonged there, even though space tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. And we're the species that has never in our entire history accepted that anything was impossible. As if summoned by her words, new reports began flooding into the council chambers. At Alpha Centauri, the humans had somehow managed to briefly reactivate their defensive fleet by cannibalizing parts from destroyed ships and civilian vessels. The makeshift armada shouldn't have been space-worthy, let alone combat effective, but it had launched a surprise attack that destroyed a Vorthon command ship. On Europa Station, human engineers had managed to weaponize their terraforming equipment, turning atmospheric processors into planet-scale weapons that could alter the chemical composition of the air around orbital installations. 3 different alien fleets had been forced to retreat when their life support systems began failing due to unexpected atmospheric changes. "Sir," reported another tactical officer to Admiral Zethkar, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel Indomitable in the Vega system. They're requesting to speak with you directly." Zethkar's mandibles clicked with curiosity. The Indomitable was surrounded by the remnants of a destroyed human defense fleet, its hull breached in dozens of places, and its engines offline. According to sensors, the ship had maybe an hour of life support remaining. What could they possibly want to discuss? "Put them through." The holographic display activated, showing the bridge of the human ship. The captain was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a uniform stained with blood and debris. Behind her, the bridge was clearly dying. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows, and the deck was littered with the bodies of her crew. "Admiral Zethkar," she said, her voice steady despite her circumstances. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Indomitable. I have a message for you and your fleet. Speak, human. You have little time left." Captain Vasquez smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Zethkar's blood run cold. "I wanted you to know that my ship's fusion reactors are set to overload in 60 seconds. We've positioned ourselves between your flagship and your supply convoy. When we detonate, the energy release will cripple your command vessel and destroy enough of your logistics ships to force your entire fleet to retreat for resupply." Zethkar felt his 4 hearts racing. "You're bluffing. No species would sacrifice themselves for such a minor tactical advantage." "You still don't understand us, do you?" Captain Vasquez said. "We're not fighting for tactical advantages, Admiral. We're fighting for time. Every minute you spend here is a minute our evacuation fleets get closer to safety. Every ship you lose is one less weapon pointed at our children. And every human who dies fighting sends a message to the rest of our species. Never surrender, never stop fighting, and never let them break our spirit." The transmission ended. 60 seconds later, the Indomitable exploded with the force of a small star, and Admiral Zethkar learned firsthand what it meant to fight a species that valued something more than their own lives. 3 months into what should have been a swift conquest, the Galactic Alliance found itself trapped in a war that seemed to grow more impossible with each passing day. Emergency sessions of the Council convened daily now, as species representatives demanded explanations for why a primitive civilization was not only surviving but actively winning battles against impossible odds. General Vexthul of the reptilian hegemony slammed his clawed hand against the podium, his yellow eyes blazing with frustration. "The humans are not playing by any known rules of warfare. They have turned their own evacuation routes into weapons. Their refugee ships are loaded with antimatter bombs that detonate when our forces attempt to capture them. Worse than that, added Admiral Kretos of the Aquatic Federation, her gills fluttering with agitation. They've somehow managed to coordinate resistance across their entire territory without using any detectable communication methods. Every time we think we've cut off one sector from the rest, they demonstrate tactical coordination that shouldn't be possible. What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity had spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. During the early days of galactic contact, human strategists had recognized that their species would always be outnumbered and outgunned in any large-scale conflict. The solution had been to build redundancy into everything. Every human colony had been designed with hidden communication networks using quantum entanglement, a technology most species considered too expensive for widespread deployment. Every civilian vessel carried military-grade defensive systems disguised as standard equipment. Every human settlement had underground facilities that could function as military command centers if needed. But more than that, humans had done something that no other species in galactic history had ever attempted. They had militarized their entire culture. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the increasingly desperate alien leadership and explained what they were really fighting. You keep calling us a primitive species, but you don't understand what that word means when applied to humans. Every other species in this galaxy evolved on stable worlds with predictable climates and abundant resources. You developed civilization in comfort and safety. We evolved on a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill us. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Ice ages that lasted for millennia, volcanic eruptions that blacked out the sun for years, asteroid impacts that destroyed entire ecosystems, predators that hunted us, diseases that decimated our populations, and natural disasters that wiped out entire civilizations. We didn't just survive all of that, we thrived because of it. The alien representatives watched in growing unease as the display showed humanity's development through warfare, plague, famine, and catastrophe. Where other species had unified early in their development, humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other in increasingly sophisticated ways. They had developed military technology not as a tool of expansion, but as a necessity for survival. Every human child learns basic military tactics in school, Sarah continued. Every human adult knows how to use weapons, how to build fortifications, how to survive in hostile environments. What you call our civilian population would be considered a military reserve force by galactic standards. You're not fighting an army backed by civilians. You're fighting an entire species that has been bred for war over millions of years. On the battlefield, this translated into resistance that defied all alien understanding. When the crystalline hierarchy overran the mining colony on Asteroid Prime, they expected to find cowering civilians ready for relocation. Instead, they found that the miners had turned their entire operation into a fortress. The asteroid's tunnels had been rigged with explosives. The mining equipment had been converted into automated defense turrets, and the human workers fought with a coordination that spoke of extensive military training. The battle for Asteroid Prime lasted 6 weeks, with the crystalline forces slowly being worn down by constant guerrilla attacks. The humans used the asteroid's natural structure against their enemies, collapsing tunnels behind advancing alien forces and using the mining charges to create cave-ins that trapped entire units. When the crystalline forces finally took control of the asteroid, they found it completely worthless. Every piece of valuable equipment destroyed, every tunnel system compromised, and the remaining human defenders having escaped through secret passages that led to hidden spacecraft. Similar scenes played out across human space. The agricultural world of New Eden had been converted into a chemical warfare production facility, with the farmers using their knowledge of biochemistry to create weapons specifically designed to target alien physiology. The resort world of Paradise Bay had become a training ground for human special forces, with the hospitality industry providing perfect cover for intelligence operations. But it was the human response to the alien blockade of Earth that truly demonstrated the difference between human and galactic thinking. Admiral Zethkar had deployed the largest fleet in galactic history around humanity's homeworld, creating what should have been an impenetrable blockade. No ship could approach Earth without running the gauntlet of 50,000 heavily armed vessels from every major galactic civilization. The humans responded by launching an attack that violated every principle of space warfare. Instead of trying to break through the blockade with military vessels, they sent their entire civilian merchant marine. Cargo ships, passenger liners, research vessels, mining barges, everything that could carry a human crew and achieve faster-than-light travel, came streaming toward Earth from every direction simultaneously. The alien fleet found itself facing not an enemy armada, but 10,000 individual ships, each one following a different approach vector and carrying a different type of improvised weapon. Cargo vessels had been loaded with kinetic projectiles. Passenger ships carried experimental weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. Research vessels had been converted into electronic warfare platforms that could disrupt alien communication systems across entire star systems. "It's madness," Admiral Zethkar reported to the Council. "They're throwing away their entire civilian fleet for no strategic gain. We're destroying them by the hundreds, but they keep coming. It's like they don't care about losses." But the humans did care about losses. They simply understood something that the aliens didn't. The merchant marine assault wasn't designed to break the blockade. It was designed to force the alien fleet to reveal the full extent of its capabilities, while simultaneously providing real-time intelligence about alien weaknesses and tactical patterns. Every human ship that died transmitted detailed sensor data back to hidden observation posts throughout the Sol system. Every weapon fired by the alien fleet provided information about energy signatures, reload times, and targeting patterns. Every tactical decision made by alien commanders was recorded and analyzed by human strategists who had spent their entire careers studying galactic military doctrine. By the time the merchant marine assault was over, humanity had gathered more detailed intelligence about the combined alien fleet than any species had ever possessed about their enemies. They knew which ships were vulnerable to specific types of attack, which commanders made predictable decisions under pressure, and which alien species had weaknesses that could be exploited. More importantly, they had identified the one thing that every species in the Galactic Alliance shared: overconfidence in their technological superiority. The aliens had brought their most advanced weapons to ensure a quick victory, but they had also brought their most critical vulnerabilities. Every piece of exotic technology, every experimental weapon system, every prototype defense grid that the Alliance had deployed could potentially be turned against them by a species that specialized in adaptive warfare. As the debris from the merchant marine assault slowly orbited Earth, human engineers on the planet below began implementing the final phase of their defensive strategy. Deep beneath the surface, in facilities that had been under construction since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, the weapons that would turn the tide of the war were finally coming online. The aliens thought they were besieging Earth. They were about to discover that they had walked into the largest trap in human history. The transformation began so subtly that Admiral Zethkar almost missed it. Deep space sensors detected faint energy signatures from Earth's surface, nothing unusual for a heavily populated planet with massive industrial centers. What made his tactical officers pause was the pattern of the energy releases. They weren't random industrial emissions. They were synchronized, pulsing in harmony across the entire planet like a massive heartbeat. "Sir," reported his sensor operator, "we're detecting unusual electromagnetic activity across Earth's surface. The patterns suggest coordinated activation of some kind of planetary system." Zethkar studied the readings with growing unease. In 4 months of siege, Earth had been surprisingly quiet. The orbital defense platforms had been destroyed in the first wave of the attack. The human fleet had been scattered or eliminated, and the planet's surface installations showed no signs of military activity beyond basic defensive measures. The lack of resistance had actually worried him more than fierce opposition would have. "Analysis of the energy signatures? Unknown, sir. The technology doesn't match anything in our databases. The power levels are significant. Each pulse is generating approximately the same energy output as a small fusion reactor. Across the blockade fleet, similar readings were being reported. The crystalline hierarchies detection specialist noticed harmonic frequencies that shouldn't exist in nature. The mechanical collective's analytical systems flagged electromagnetic patterns that violated their understanding of terrestrial technology. The ethereal collective's energy-based sensors detected something that made their collective consciousness recoil in alarm. On Earth's surface, in control rooms buried miles beneath the planet's crust, Human technicians monitored systems that had taken 50 years to build and had never been tested at full power. Project Looking Glass had been humanity's ultimate insurance policy, a planetary defense system that didn't rely on ships or orbital platforms, but on Earth itself. Global positioning confirmed, reported Dr. Jennifer Walsh from the main command center beneath the Swiss Alps. All continental arrays are online and synchronized. Power levels are nominal across all 700 installation sites. Stellar positioning locked, added her colleague from a backup facility in the Australian outback. Solar wind patterns analyzed and compensated for. We have clear targeting solutions on all priority vessels in the blockade fleet. The technology behind Project Looking Glass was uniquely human in its approach. While other species had developed increasingly sophisticated weapons platforms, humans had taken a different path. They had turned their entire homeworld into a weapon. Earth's magnetic field, already powerful due to the planet's molten core, had been artificially enhanced through a network of underground installations that could manipulate magnetic flux on a planetary scale. The planet's rotation had been harnessed to create the largest electromagnetic rail system ever conceived, capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Most importantly, the system used Earth's own gravitational field as a focusing lens for exotic energy weapons that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Admiral Zethkar was studying tactical reports when his flagship's proximity alarms began screaming. "Sir, we're detecting incoming projectiles from Earth's surface. Velocity." "That can't be right. These readings suggest near-light-speed kinetic weapons." Before Zethkar could respond, the first salvo from Project Looking Glass reached his fleet. Kinetic projectiles the size of small asteroids, accelerated to 20% of light speed by Earth's planetary rail system, struck the alien vessels with the force of nuclear weapons. Ships that had withstood concentrated fleet bombardments for months were simply erased from existence by the impact of supervelocity metal moving faster than most alien weapons could track. But the kinetic bombardment was just the beginning. As the alien fleet reeled from the unexpected assault, Earth's gravity-focused energy weapons came online. Beams of exotic particles channeled through the planet's own gravitational field and focused by artificial magnetic lenses lanced out toward the largest alien vessels. The energy weapons didn't just damage their targets, they seemed to ignore conventional shields and armor entirely, striking at the molecular level and causing enemy ships to simply disintegrate. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Zethkar as he watched his sensor displays. "They're using their planet's gravity well as a weapon system. How did we not detect this during our reconnaissance?" The answer was classically human in its deviousness. Project Looking Glass had been built using entirely civilian technologies that served dual purposes. The underground installations had been disguised as geothermal power plants, mining operations, and scientific research facilities. The magnetic field generators had been presented as experiments in planetary climate control. The gravity manipulation systems had been explained as terraforming research for future colony worlds. Every component of the planetary weapon system had been hidden in plain sight, scattered across Earth's surface and integrated with legitimate civilian infrastructure. The aliens had spent years studying human military installations, never realizing that the entire planet was a military installation. Within minutes of Project Looking Glass coming online, the alien blockade fleet found itself facing extinction. Ships that had taken decades to build and represented the pinnacle of their respective species' technology were being destroyed faster than their crews could comprehend what was happening. The Saurian dreadnought Apex Predator, pride of the reptilian navy, lasted 17 seconds against Earth's planetary defenses. The crystalline siege platform Harmonic Resonance, supposedly invulnerable to conventional weapons, shattered like glass when struck by gravity-focused particle beams. But Admiral Zethkar quickly realized that the planetary weapons were just the prelude to something much worse. As his fleet scattered to avoid the deadly fire from Earth's surface, new sensor contacts began appearing throughout the Sol system. They weren't coming from Earth, they were coming from everywhere. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the asteroid belt, and from the outer planets, and from..." The sensor operator paused, checking his instruments in disbelief. "From the sun itself." The truth hit Zethkar like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just weaponized Earth, they had weaponized their entire solar system. The asteroid belt had been turned into a massive kinetic weapons platform, with mining operations that could launch asteroids at significant fractions of light speed toward any target in the system. The gas giants had been equipped with atmospheric processors that could generate and direct plasma streams hot enough to melt starship hulls. Even the sun had been modified, with solar collectors that could focus stellar energy into beams powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. How long? Zethkar demanded. How long have they been preparing for this? His intelligence officer, reviewing the tactical data streaming in from across the system, provided an answer that chilled every alien commander who heard it. Based on the scope and integration of these installations, sir, they must have started construction within years of first contact with galactic civilization. They've been planning this war for half a century. The realization spread through the alien fleet like a virus. The humans hadn't just been preparing for the possibility of galactic war. They had been counting on it. Every diplomatic mission, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange had been used to gather intelligence about alien capabilities while secretly preparing Earth's solar system for the largest defensive battle in galactic history as the alien fleet continued to take devastating losses from weapons they couldn't effectively counter. Admiral Zethkar made the hardest decision of his military career. For the first time in the recorded history of galactic warfare, the largest armada ever assembled was forced to retreat from a single star system. But the humans weren't finished. As the alien fleet began its withdrawal, new contacts appeared on long-range sensors. Human ships previously thought destroyed or scattered were emerging from hidden bases throughout the outer system. They weren't coming to defend Earth. They were coming to pursue the retreating alien fleet. The hunted had become the hunters, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity went on the offensive. The Galactic Council chambers had never hosted a scene like this. Representatives from 12,000 species sat in stunned silence as the holographic displays showed the systematic collapse of the greatest military alliance in galactic history. What had begun as humanity's enslavement had become the galaxy's nightmare. Admiral Zethkar stood before the assembly, his forearms trembling with exhaustion and defeat. His once pristine uniform was torn and stained, his compound eyes dim with the weight of impossible losses. Around him, the other military commanders who had promised swift victory looked like broken shells of their former selves. The human pursuit fleets have broken through our defenses at Wolf 359, Alpha Centauri, and Barnard Star, he reported, his voice barely above a whisper. They're not just reclaiming their territory, they're advancing into our space. 18 core worlds of the Vorthan Empire are under siege. The crystalline hierarchy has lost 3 of their sacred nexus points. The Saurian home fleet has been scattered across 6 systems. The numbers were staggering, but they didn't capture the true horror of humanity's counterattack. The humans weren't fighting like any species the galaxy had ever encountered. They seemed to have learned every lesson from their defensive battles and applied them with ruthless efficiency. Dr. Sarah Chen, no longer the desperate ambassador pleading for her species' survival, stood calmly in the center of the chamber. Around her, alien representatives who had once looked at her with contempt now avoided meeting her eyes. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that even she struggled to process it. You wanted to know what humans are capable of when their survival is threatened, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. Now you know. But this isn't survival anymore. This is justice. The human fleets that emerged from Earth's solar system bore no resemblance to the ships the aliens had fought during the initial invasion. These were vessels built from the wreckage of the alien armada, incorporating technology from dozens of different species and powered by fusion reactors that pushed the boundaries of physics. They carried weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien science, creating combinations that no galactic military had ever conceived. More terrifying than their technology was their tactics. The humans had spent months studying every aspect of galactic military doctrine, and they had found ways to turn each species' greatest strengths into crippling weaknesses. Against the crystalline hierarchy, humans deployed sonic weapons that could shatter living crystal at the molecular level. Against the Aquatic Federation, they used atmospheric processors to alter the chemical composition of water on their homeworlds. Against the Mechanical Collective, they released computer viruses that could corrupt artificial intelligence systems and turned automated defenses against their creators. But it was their psychological warfare that truly broke the spirit of the Galactic Alliance. The humans didn't just defeat enemy fleets. They made sure every surviving alien understood exactly how the defeat had been accomplished. They broadcast detailed analyses of alien tactical failures, demonstrated the weaknesses they had exploited, and made it clear that resistance was not just futile, but actively counterproductive. The Vorthan battle doctrine relies on overwhelming firepower delivered through coordinated fleet formations. Admiral Chen had explained in a broadcast that reached every military communication system in the galaxy. But coordinated formations become a liability when your enemy can predict your movements and exploit the mathematical relationships between your ships. We've been studying your formations for 50 years. We know where every ship will be before you give the order to move. The broadcast had been accompanied by tactical demonstrations that showed human fleets destroying Vorthan, armadas using predictions so accurate they bordered on precognition. The Vorthan military command, faced with the realization that their entire strategic doctrine was obsolete, had surrendered rather than see their remaining fleets annihilated. Similar surrenders followed across the galaxy, as species after species realized that continuing the war would only accelerate their own destruction. The Aquatic Federation capitulated when human forces demonstrated the ability to alter the atmospheric composition of their water worlds from orbit. The insectoid hives surrendered when humans proved they could disrupt the pheromone communication systems that held their societies together. Now, 6 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the survivors of the Galactic Alliance found themselves in the unprecedented position of pleading for mercy from the species they had tried to enslave. "What do you want from us?" asked the ethereal collective's representative, its energy form flickering with distress. "Your fleets control half the galaxy. Your technology has proven superior to our combined sciences. What will it take for this war to end?" Sarah Chen looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien faces watching her with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. These beings represented civilizations that were millions of years older than humanity, species that had mastered technologies humans were only beginning to understand. 6 months ago they had been united in their determination to destroy her people. Now they were begging for terms. "You began this war because you feared what humanity might become," she said. "You were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons you thought. You feared our aggression, our expansion, our refusal to accept limitations, but what you should have feared was our capacity to learn, to adapt, and to never forget." She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Human-controlled systems were marked in blue, spreading like a tide across territories that had been alien for millennia. But the expansion wasn't random, it followed patterns that spoke of careful planning and strategic thinking that operated on timescales most species couldn't comprehend. "We don't want to rule the galaxy," Sarah continued. "We never did, but we will never again allow ourselves to be vulnerable to the kind of coordinated attack you launched against us. From this day forward, humanity will maintain sufficient military strength to ensure that no alliance of species, however large, can threaten our existence." The terms she outlined were more generous than any alien leader had dared hope for, but they came with conditions that would reshape galactic civilization forever. The great military alliances that had dominated galactic politics for millennia would be disbanded. No species would be permitted to maintain military forces beyond what was necessary for local defense. Most importantly, humanity would assume responsibility for maintaining galactic security, a role they would never relinquish. "You call this justice," protested the mechanical collective's representative. "But you're imposing human authority over species that never consented to your rule." Sarah's expression hardened. "You forfeited the right to consent when you decided to commit genocide against my species. But I'll give you the same choice you gave us. Surrender and live under our protection or continue fighting and face extinction." The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Every species in the Galactic Alliance accepted humanity's terms, rather than face continued war against an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every battle. The great civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years bowed before a species that had achieved faster than light, travel less than a century earlier. But as the alien representatives filed out of the council chambers, many of them couldn't help but reflect on the bitter irony of their situation. They had united to prevent humanity from becoming a dominant galactic power, and in doing so, they had created exactly the outcome they feared most. Humanity now possessed the largest fleet in galactic history, composed of ships built from alien technology and crewed by beings who had been forged in the crucible of existential war. They had proven their ability to not just survive against impossible odds, but to turn those odds in their favor through intelligence, adaptation, and sheer refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy had learned, too late, that there were worse things than sharing space with an aggressive, expanding species. There was facing the consequences of trying to destroy that species and failing. As Sarah Chen stood alone in the empty council chambers, looking up at the star charts that now showed a galaxy under human protection, she allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. Humanity had survived its greatest test and emerged not just victorious but transformed. They were no longer the newcomers pleading for acceptance in galactic civilization. They were its guardians, its protectors, and, whether the other species liked it or not, its rulers. The age of humanity had begun.